I've never told this story before because honestly, I was too embarrassed. But last week I got an email from a guy who reminded me so much of myself 3 years ago that I knew I had to share what happened to me in Pattaya. Maybe it'll save him or you from making the same mistakes I did. Let me know where you're watching from. In the comments, I read every one. And if you enjoy the stories I share and want to support the channel, feel free to use the Super Thanks feature below the video. Your support helps me keep creating more content, and I truly appreciate it. My name is Roy. I'm 51 now, and 3 years ago, I was a completely different person. I thought I had life figured out. I was 48, running a successful consulting business in Columbus, Ohio, married for 18 years to my college sweetheart, Sarah. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the driveway, decent bank account, but inside, I was dying. The marriage had been over for years, if I'm being honest. Sarah and I had become roommates who occasionally argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Our sex life had flatlined somewhere around year 12. We went through the motions, dinner together while staring at our phones, obligatory questions about each other's day, sleeping in the same bed but might as well have been on different planets. When Sarah finally asked for the divorce, I felt relief more than anything else. But then came the loneliness. The house that had felt too small suddenly felt cavernous. I'd come home from work to complete silence, heat up a frozen dinner, and wonder if this was all there was left for me. At 48, was I just supposed to accept that the best years were behind me? My buddy Mike, who'd gone through his own divorce a few years earlier, suggested I take a trip. You need to get out of your head, man. Go somewhere completely different. Thailand changed my perspective entirely. Mike had spent a month in Bangkok the year after his divorce and came back looking 10 years younger. He talked about the culture, the food, the warmth of the people, but mostly he talked about how alive he felt there. I'll be honest, I wasn't thinking about bar girls or anything like that when I booked my ticket to Bangkok with a connection to Pattaya. I genuinely thought I was going for the cultural experience, to find myself all that eat, pray, love nonsense. I'd read some travel blogs, watch some YouTube videos about expat life. It looked like paradise compared to the gray Ohio winter I was staring down. The humidity hit me like a wall when I stepped off the plane in Bangkok. Even at 10 p.m., it was 85 degrees and muggy. But there was something electric about it, something alive that I hadn't felt in years. The smells, the sounds, the chaos of it all, it was overwhelming and intoxicating at the same time. I took a taxi to Pattaya the next morning, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to something that looked like the postcards I'd seen. Palm trees, blue water in the distance, motorbikes everywhere. My hotel was right on Beach Road, and I spent my first day just walking around, trying to process everything. Pattaya during the day was one thing. Families on the beach, street food vendors, relatively normal tourist stuff. But as the sun went down, the city transformed into something else entirely. Neon lights everywhere, music pumping from every doorway, and yes, beautiful women in tiny dresses on every corner. I wasn't looking for anything when I wandered into that first go-go bar. I told myself I was just curious, just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. The music was deafening, lights flashing everywhere, and girls dancing on stages wearing practically nothing. I felt like I was on another planet. That's when I saw her, Anna. Even in a room full of stunning women, she stood out. Long black hair, perfect skin, and when she smiled at me from across the room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. She was young, I could tell that right away, but there was something in her eyes that seemed older, more mature than her years. She approached my table after her set, and I was surprised by how nervous I felt. Here I was, a grown man who'd negotiated million-dollar deals, and I was tongue-tied because a beautiful 23-year-old wanted to talk to me. "You look different from other customers," she said in surprisingly good English. "More gentle, more kind." We talked for hours that first night. Well, I talked and she listened, laughing at my jokes, asking questions about America, telling me bits and pieces about her life. She was from a small village in Aizen province, had come to Pattaya to make money for her family. Her mother was sick, needed expensive medical treatment. She hated working in the bar but didn't have other options. When I left that night, Anna walked me to the door. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked. And the way she looked at me, hopeful, almost vulnerable, I knew I would. The next few weeks were like nothing I'd ever experienced. Anna would finish work at the bar around 2 a.m., and we'd grab late-night food at one of the 24-hour places on Beach Road. During the day, she'd show me around Pattaya, temples I never would have found on my own, local markets where I was the only foreigner, beaches away from the tourist crowds. She was fascinated by everything about my life back home. How big was my house? What was snow like? Did I really drive my own car everywhere instead of taking taxis? Her questions made me see my ordinary life through different eyes. Things I'd taken for granted suddenly seemed exotic and impressive. Anna told me about her childhood in the village, how her father had left when she was young, how she'd had to drop out of school to help support her 3 younger siblings. She showed me pictures on her phone, a simple wooden house on stilts, her mother looking frail and tired, her little brothers and sister in their school uniforms. "I send most of my money home," she explained one afternoon as we sat watching the sunset from Jomtien Beach. "My mother, she very sick, heart problem, need operation but cost too much." I found myself getting angry on her behalf. How could a system exist where someone as smart and kind as Anna had to work in a go-go bar just to pay for her mother's medical care? It wasn't fair. She deserved better. "How much does the operation cost?" I asked. "Too much," she said sadly. "Maybe 200,000 baht. I never have so much money." 200,000 baht was about $6,000. I had that much in my checking account back home. For me, it was a nice vacation or a small home improvement project. For Anna's mother, it was the difference between life and death. "What if I helped?" I said before I could stop myself. Anna's eyes went wide. "You would do that? But why? You don't even know my family." "Because I care about you," I said, and I meant it. "Because I want to help." She started crying right there on the beach, telling me I was the kindest man she'd ever met, that she couldn't believe someone like me existed. When she hugged me, I felt like I could conquer the world. I wired the money for her mother's operation the next week. Anna was so grateful, so emotional about it. She kept saying she didn't know how to repay me, that I was an angel sent to help her family. I told her she didn't need to repay me, that seeing her happy was enough. But of course there were complications. The hospital required additional tests before the surgery. The doctor wanted to try some expensive medications first. Each new expense was relatively small, minus $500 here, $800 there, but they added up. Every time Anna came to me with tears in her eyes, apologizing profusely, explaining the latest financial emergency, I couldn't say no. My buddies back home started asking questions when I extended my 2-week vacation to a month, then 2 months. Mike, the same guy who'd recommended Thailand in the first place, called me with concerns. "Dude, I know Thailand can be addictive, but you've been there almost 3 months. What's going on?" I told him about Anna, about how different this relationship was from anything I'd experienced, how she made me feel young again, needed, important. "Roy, please tell me you're not sending money to a bar girl." "It's not like that," I insisted. "Anna's different. She's not like the others. She genuinely cares about me." "That's what they all say, man. That's literally their job." I got angry at Mike, accused him of being cynical, of not understanding what Anna and I had. How could he judge when he'd never met her, never seen how she looked at me, never heard the things she told me about her life? But late at night, alone in my hotel room, Mike's words echoed in my head. Was I being naive? Was I just another sucker falling for the oldest trick in the book? Then Anna would text me good morning with a dozen heart emojis, or show up at my hotel with homemade somtam that her friend had taught her to make, or curl up next to me watching Netflix and talking about her dreams of opening a small restaurant someday, and all my doubts would disappear. By month 4, I'd moved out of the hotel and into a nice 1-bedroom condo in Jomtien. Anna had stopped working at the bar. I was giving her enough money each month that she didn't need to anymore. She moved in with me, and for the first time in years I felt like I was actually living instead of just existing. Our days had a routine. Anna would wake up early and go to the market, coming back with fresh fruit and ingredients for breakfast. She was teaching herself to cook Western food from YouTube videos, determined to make me feel at home. We'd spend the day exploring, visiting temples, going to the floating market, taking day trips to nearby islands. Aina introduced me to her friend Nim, who had a Thai boyfriend named Somchai. The four of us would go out for dinner, and I loved how normal it felt. Here was proof that Thai foreign relationships could work, that what Anna and I had wasn't just some fantasy. She took me to meet her family during Songkran. The trip to her village was eye-opening. The poverty was real, more intense than I'd imagined. Her mother did seem genuinely grateful for the help with her medical bills, though she spoke no English and Aina had to translate everything. Her little brothers and sister were adorable, climbing all over me, fascinated by my height and the hair on my arms. Anna's mother cooked an elaborate feast for my visit, and the whole extended family came to meet the American who was helping their daughter. Sitting on the floor of that simple wooden house, eating samtam and sticky rice with my hands, while Anna translated jokes and stories, I felt more connected to something real than I had in decades. This was what life was supposed to be about: family, community, helping each other. "My family love you so much," Anna told me as we drove back to Pattaya. "My mother say you like son to her now." I was part of something bigger than myself. I belonged somewhere. For a man who'd spent years feeling invisible in his own life, it was intoxicating. 6 months into our relationship, Anna came to me with an idea that would change everything. Her friend Nim and Somchai were thinking about opening a small restaurant near the beach. Nothing fancy, just good Thai food at reasonable prices for both locals and tourists. They ask if maybe we want to be partners, Aina explained over dinner. I tell them I ask you first. I think maybe it good business, but also we have something together, something that ours. The idea appealed to me immediately. I'd been living off my savings and the money from my business back home, but I wasn't really building anything. A restaurant would give us a shared project, a future we were creating together. Anna had clearly been thinking about this for a while. She showed me locations they'd looked at, explained the rent costs, had rough estimates for equipment and licensing. The initial investment would be about $30,000, a significant amount, but not unreasonable for a small business. "I know is a lot of money," Anna said carefully, "but I think we can make good profit, and also I can help run restaurant, use my English with foreign customers. We be team." I love the idea of being a team. Back in Ohio, I'd always felt like I was working alone, building something that ultimately didn't matter to anyone but me. This would be different. This would be ours. We spent weeks looking at potential locations, meeting with contractors about renovations, researching licenses and permits. Anna threw herself into the planning with an enthusiasm that was infectious. She made lists, drew floor plans, researched suppliers. Watching her get excited about our future together made me fall even deeper in love. But as we got deeper into the planning, the cost kept growing. The location we wanted required more renovation than expected. The kitchen equipment was more expensive than we'd budgeted. The licensing process involved fees and expediting costs that no one had mentioned initially. "I'm sorry," Anna would say each time she came to me with news of another expense. "I know you already spend so much money. Maybe we should forget this idea." But I didn't want to give up. We'd come so far, invested so much time and planning, and Anna was clearly devastated each time it looked like we might have to abandon the restaurant dream. "Don't worry about the money," I told her. "I believe in this. I believe in us." The first crack in my perfect world came from an unexpected source. I was at a 7-Eleven near our condo when I ran into another expat, an older British guy named Dave who'd been living in Pattaya for years. "You're Roy, right?" he said. "The American living with Anna from Angel Witch?" I confirmed that yes, I was Roy, though I corrected him that Anna used to work at Angel Witch but didn't anymore. Dave got a strange look on his face. Mate, I saw her there last Thursday night, talking to some German bloke at the bar. That's impossible, I said. Anna was with me last Thursday. We watched a movie at home. Dave shrugged. Maybe it was someone who looked like her. Easy mistake to make. But the seed of doubt was planted. That night, I found myself studying Anna's face as she told me about her day, looking for signs of deception. Had she really spent the afternoon shopping with Nim like she said? The bags she'd brought home could have come from anywhere. I started paying more attention to small inconsistencies. Anna's phone would buzz with messages she'd quickly dismiss as just Nim or my sister. She'd sometimes come home later than expected with vague explanations about traffic or running into friends. When I asked about her mother's condition, Anna's updates were oddly generic. She's feeling better, or the medication is helping. When I suggested maybe we should visit again soon, Anna always had reasons why it wasn't a good time. The restaurant planning hit more snags. The permits were taking longer than expected. Our preferred location fell through, and we had to start over with a new space. Each delay meant more money. Holding deposits, storage fees for equipment we'd already bought, consultant fees for navigating the bureaucracy. I think maybe someone not want us to succeed, Anna said one evening after another setback. Maybe we pay something extra, make sure everything goes smooth. More money. Always more money. But what choice did I have? We'd already invested so much. If we gave up now, everything would be lost. I started having trouble sleeping. Lying in bed next to Anna, I'd run through the numbers in my head. How much had I spent so far? How much was left in my savings? What was my exit strategy if this all fell apart? But then Anna would roll over and put her arm around me, or I'd wake up to her making breakfast and humming Thai songs, and I'd push the doubts away. This was real. What we had was real. The crisis came in month 10. Our restaurant was finally ready to open, but there was a problem with the final licensing. Some bureaucratic issue that threatened to shut us down before we'd even served our first customer. Anna was frantic. She'd been at government offices all day, trying to sort out the paperwork. When she came home that evening, she was in tears. They say we need to pay 500,000 baht immediately, or they cancel everything, she sobbed. All our work, all your money, everything will be lost. 500,000 baht was over $15,000. It was money I didn't have readily available. I'd already emptied most of my accessible savings into the restaurant. But if we pay this, then everything is finished? I asked. No more problems, no more delays? Yes, Anna said firmly. This is the last thing. After this, we can open and start making money back. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. $15,000 would mean liquidating my retirement account, paying early withdrawal penalties, wiping out the financial security I'd spent decades building. But what was the alternative? Walk away from everything we'd invested, everything we'd built together, go back to Ohio with nothing to show for the best year of my life? Anna was awake too, I could tell. I'm sorry, she whispered in the dark. I know this is too much money. Maybe we should just give up. No, I said, making the decision that would change everything. We've come too far to quit now. I'll get the money. I wired the funds from my retirement account the next morning. The penalties were brutal. I lost almost 30% to taxes and fees, but I told myself it was an investment in our future. In 6 months, we'd be running a successful restaurant. In a year, we'd have made the money back, and more. Anna was so grateful, so relieved. She promised me this was the last time, that after this we'd never have to worry about money again. We'd be partners in every sense of the word. I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. I should have known something was wrong when Anna started working late. Just helping Nim with some family problems, she'd explain when she came home at 2 or 3 a.m. You know how Thai families are, always some drama. I should have been suspicious when she became protective of her phone, taking it with her to the bathroom, turning it face down when we were together. But I trusted her. After everything we'd been through, after all I'd sacrificed for our future, doubt felt like betrayal. The end came suddenly, like a heart attack. I woke up one morning and Anna was gone. Not just out for the morning, gone. Her clothes, her jewelry, her pictures of her family, everything. The only thing she left behind was a note in broken English. "Sorry, Roy, I have to go. Thank you for everything. Please don't try to find me." I called her phone immediately. Disconnected. I went to Nim's apartment empty. Neighbors said they'd moved out the week before. I went to the restaurant location, locked up, a "for rent" sign in the window. In my panic, I started making calls. The licensing office had no record of our permits. The contractor we'd supposedly paid for renovations had never heard of us. The equipment we bought for the kitchen didn't exist. It took me 3 days to piece together the full scope of what had happened. 3 days of phone calls, visits to government offices, conversations with other expats who'd heard versions of my story before. There was no restaurant, there never had been. The permits, the delays, the bureaucratic problems, all of it had been an elaborate fiction designed to separate me from my money. Anna hadn't stopped working at the go-go bar. According to other girls who worked there, she'd been showing up regularly the entire time she was supposedly living with me. The nights she came home late weren't about helping Nim, they were about working her shifts and entertaining other customers. The worst part came when I started digging deeper. Another expat, an Australian guy named Greg, approached me at a bar where I was drowning my sorrows. "You're the American who was with Anna, right?" he said. "Man, I'm sorry. She got me for about $8,000 last year with the same sick mother story." There had been others. A German businessman who'd funded her brother's education. A French retiree who'd helped with family land payments. A British expat who'd paid for her grandmother's funeral. I wasn't special. I wasn't the love of her life. I was just the biggest fish she'd managed to hook, the one willing to go deeper than the others. The money was gone. All of it. My savings, my retirement, even the emergency fund I'd kept back home for real catastrophes. I had maybe $2,000 to my name and a maxed out credit card. I stayed in Thailand for another month, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't afford to leave. I moved to the cheapest room I could find, survived on street food and instant noodles, and tried to figure out how to rebuild my life from nothing. The shame was almost unbearable. How do you tell people you've been so completely, thoroughly fooled? How do you explain that a 48-year-old successful businessman fell for the oldest scam in the book? But slowly, as the shock wore off and I started to think clearly again, I began to understand what had really happened. It wasn't just about Anna being a good liar, though she was excellent at her job. It was about me being the perfect victim. I'd come to Thailand broken and lonely, desperate to feel needed and important again. Anna had recognized that immediately and given me exactly what I was hungry for. She'd made me feel like a hero, a savior, a man whose money and attention could solve all her problems. Every story she'd told me had been carefully crafted to appeal to my specific vulnerabilities. The sick mother played to my desire to be helpful. The poor family played to my Western guilt about wealth inequality. The business opportunity played to my need to feel productive and important. Even the sex was part of the package, not just the physical act, but the way she made me feel desired, virile, attractive. For a man going through a midlife crisis, wondering if his best years were behind him, that validation was intoxicating. I finally managed to scrape together enough money for a plane ticket home by selling everything I'd accumulated in Thailand and borrowing from my credit cards. The flight back to Ohio was the longest 20 hours of my life. Coming home was brutal. I had to move in with my brother temporarily while I figured out my finances. I had to rebuild my consulting business from scratch, taking any work I could get. The house I'd owned was gone. I'd sold it during the divorce and blown the proceeds in Pattaya. But I was alive. I was free. And slowly, painfully, I was learning to forgive myself. The emails started coming about 6 months after I got back. Men who'd heard my story through the expat grapevine asking for advice, sharing their own experiences. That's when I realized how common this was, how many of us there were. We all had the same basic story. Middle-aged, recently divorced or widowed, successful but emotionally vulnerable. We'd all gone to Thailand looking for something: adventure, validation, a new start, and we'd all found women who specialized in giving lonely men exactly what they thought they wanted. The details varied. Some guys lost tens of thousands on fake businesses. Others got cleaned out funding medical emergencies or family crises. A few had actually married their scammers and lost everything in divorce proceedings when the women got their citizenship and disappeared. But the psychological pattern was always the same. We'd been marks from the moment we stepped off the plane, targeted by women who could spot our vulnerabilities from across a crowded bar. Now I try to help when I can. When guys email me asking about Thai relationships, I don't lecture them or tell them all Thai women are scammers. That's not true, and it's not helpful. But I do try to share what I learned about the warning signs, about the psychology of these situations, about why smart, successful men can make such devastatingly stupid decisions. The biggest lesson? If you're going to Thailand to escape problems in your life, you're not going to find solutions there. You're just going to find people who are very good at exploiting those problems. Thailand is a beautiful country with wonderful people, but it's also home to some of the most sophisticated romance scammers in the world, and they've turned separating lonely foreign men from their money into an art form. If you're considering a relationship with someone you meet in the bar scene, ask yourself, would this person be interested in me if I were broke? If the answer isn't an immediate, confident yes, then you're not looking at love, you're looking at a business transaction. I'm 51 now, living in a modest apartment in Columbus, slowly rebuilding my retirement fund. I'm dating again. American women my own age who have their own careers and don't need me to solve their financial problems. It's different from what I had with Anna. Less intense, maybe, but it's real. Sometimes I still think about those months in Pattaya, about how alive I felt, how needed, how important, and I miss it, if I'm being honest. But I also know now that it was all an illusion, a very expensive fantasy that nearly destroyed my life. If my story saves even one person from making the same mistakes I did, then maybe losing everything wasn't completely pointless. Maybe some good can come from my stupidity. Just remember, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is, especially in Pattaya.